what you're really doing is helping him to differentiate the task. Oh, I multiplied wrong. You're right. You found your own error. Now, isn't that great? You found your own error. Beautiful. Can you correct it? He multiplies correct. Beautiful. Now, see if your answer comes out correct. He goes right down through. It was one error in one spot. He found it. He feels good because he found it and he corrected it himself. And I didn't give him a big X on it. He was able to do it himself. It was a positive way of helping him to see error was built in. Yes?
What about in language when a child is sharing and telling a certain experience? Oftentimes, my children will use an incorrect tense.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, this morning one little boy said, "I've done this page and my mom done that one."
Mm-hmm.
Is it best to say, "I'm glad to see that you both did one and use the correct"?
It depends upon the child and the level of development. I think that basically, where the child can accept the correction, in that particular case, I would make the correction. I'd say, you could simply say, I think you mean you did one and your mom did one. Is that what you meant? Oh, I'm so glad that you both had a chance to do one together. Wasn't it? I bet you enjoyed the experience. You don't belabor the point. You go on to build something enthusiastic about the fact that they enjoyed an experience together, which is a whole different focus than what the child had intended in the first. Really, what he wanted to tell you was he did something with his mom, and he's feeling good about what he did with his mom. You're not belaboring the error, but you also didn't leave it sitting there as an error to allow him to build in. Now, for a child who is sensitive about his language, I would probably use a technique that you're using, that you modeled. I'm glad to see that you did it together. That must have been enjoyable, or you must have had fun. And then work with that child alone afterwards. I would try to create an opportunity then to talk with him around did and done, so that you don't allow that error to just go unattended at all. But I wouldn't bring it up in front of the group if he's sensitive to his language. So that feedback is important. Reward and punishment is important. It's important for children to understand that there is a reward and punishment system. The world we live in has a reward-punishment system. It's not inconceivable for the child to figure out the punishment for what he did. If a child consistently does, if he volitionally decided to smack someone else, I certainly would do something about it. I wouldn't allow him to just go on smacking people in the face because that happened to be his idea. I would do something more than verbally explain to him that that was not the correct kind of behavior. I would do something else around it. It may be using a behavior modification technique. What you see we've done is we pull in all the good things that we have at our fingertips. Behavior, timeouts, contracting, doing these kinds of things are all important to help that child to understand that for every consequence, for every act, there's a consequence. It may be positive or negative, and he has the choice because his volitional skill is involved. And it's important for that child to make that choice. And if he makes an incorrect choice, then he has to live with the incorrect choice and have some kind of a result as around that incorrect choice. So that's an important form of feedback. Questioning is a great technique. One of the things that I learned as a teacher around this technique was the fact that teachers, quote, quote, in general, tell children far more than children need to be told. We tend to have verbal diarrhea as a quote, group. And I probably was the greatest offender, simply because I wanted the children to get this much knowledge. I wanted them to know this. I really did. I had set up this whole experience, and I just thought it was super. And I was as motivated about it, probably more so than they were many times. And I really wanted them to get this learning out of it. So instead of using a technique of questioning, I would tell them. And they took away from it part of what I wanted them to know. Because in the telling, they only tuned in to what was important to them. But by using the technique of questioning, you'd say, what can you tell me about it? Oh, great. I never even thought of that. What did you notice? Oh, and that's different than what she noticed. That's two different things we found out about that. I wouldn't even have thought of those two. But you know what I did think of? I thought of this. Did anybody think of this? Ah, so we have three different ideas about this. Now, what can we do? You know, you end up with a whole host of things. It also helps you to diagnose. It helps you to know where that child is linguistically. It helps you to know what level of achievement. We have a very simple form in the early grades. It goes like this. For every experience that we want to know the level of development on, we create the experience, and one means he has no idea. Concept has no idea what I'm talking about. Absolutely over his head. Needs more practice. Very simple way to get to know what your children do. Number two, he has the idea, but he can't generalize it yet. He's kind of focusing in on what I want him to get from this. So that tells me, in my next prescription, that I need to design some more activities that are going to incorporate that same concept so that that will become generalized within his thinking. 3 means he's got it. And this takes us to a sensitive time period. A sensitive time period in the development of children falls right here. And we have done more damage as educators to children and by clamping them down and suppressing their potential than we have done in releasing it. Because when a child has got the idea and he can generalize that concept, he is now ready to go on to something more complex. And for the teacher who makes that child sit in that group and do it over and over and over again, she is not releasing potential. She's suppressing it. Because he's already got it. Why make him practice it? There's value. And I don't mean to demean the value of drill, because drill has a value. But when you're interested in developing concepts at the optimal rate, which is what competency is built around, you want to have that happen. You want to be able to have the child know. And how many children have you ever seen in a classroom say, oh, I know that. I could do that. Well, he's telling you. He's ready for something more complex. And that's a sensitive time period. If we keep suppressing that over and over and over again, we build into that child a lag that can become solidified. This is why we have reading and television commercials at a 4th grade level, because it reaches the greatest percentage of the population. Why we have journals that are written, you know, newspapers and this, many of them are written at an 8th grade level, because we have succeeded in compressing and suppressing children's learning. So that's where they really end up, if they graduate at that point, with a competency of an 8th grade level. So these are the kinds of things that we have inadvertently, and I would be the first to say, teachers never have done this purposely. It's always been without understanding or without doing it. This is why it's important for teachers to understand the model, to understand when that period comes, that's the time to complexify the task. Teachers will say, well, with 25 kids, how can I do that? This leads us to this concept. Individualization. This model deals with the concept of individualized learning. Now, you may have lots of ideas about what individualized learning and individualization means. Let me give you what this model's viewpoint in my view. Individualizing simply means that you see every child at his own developmental level and that you program what he's getting to match that level. You're making a developmental match between what he gets and where he's at. for understanding. You can put 25 children in the same group if they all have the same level of understanding, and you are still individualizing. However, when you have 5 children in that 25 who have reached that point, and you don't take them out of that group and put them into another group, then you are no longer individualizing. So individualization can mean a one-to-one relationship experience, a 1 to 5 experience, a 1 to 25, if you have indeed diagnosed the level and the prescription fits that level. So these are basically the concepts. I'm going to go through very quick. I'm sure I'm taking more time than I should. Theory of administration. The theory of administration has basic components. The administrator serves to release potential. Whose potential? The individual teacher's potential. Every single teacher has a potential within themselves. The administrator should observe and diagnose her staff or his staff and know where that level of potential is, what the level of development is, and help to facilitate the release of that potential. The potential that she helps or he helps to release is the collective potential of the staff. You have a principal in your building. Each of the teachers in that building have individual potential. But collectively, your whole building has a potentiality, which the administrator should be helping to release. Now, having a lot of things that administrators do, budget, large numbers of children per teacher, it's not helping to release potential. So this is why it's important for administrators to understand this model, because they cannot help the collective potential unless they understand all of this. They cannot release the individual teacher's potential unless they understand what the teacher is trying to do and they understand development, the theory of development. What else do they do? They facilitate. They facilitate the growth and development of their collective staff by providing them with materials and resources, human as well as material. That is their role. And finally, how do we know this all works? Because we have a theory of evaluation. What does the theory of evaluation do? We have to evaluate each of the previous theories. Evaluation simply means what you think you're doing, are you really doing? Now, so does the theory, if the principal is doing these kinds of things, is potentiality being actualized? By helping teachers to understand these processes and see how they relate to content, is the theory of curriculum really working? Does it really actualize the potential of children? Does it help them to be competent learners? That's what we're saying it's going to do. Do these kinds of things really facilitate the best learning experience for the child? We say they do. When we actually do them, is learning competence enhanced? And so forth, right up to development and right up to philosophy. everything fall in under what we believe about man and his relationship to the universe? Everything we do and say, are we really proving that? Well, we have to have short-range feedback or short-range evaluation. Instruments that tell us, yes, these really do work. How do we know? We can prove it by kinds of tests and things that we do give children. How can we do it? We can test teachers. How do you feel about what you're doing? Do you find that teaching is easier? Do you find the children are working better, and so forth and so on? And long range. Long range there. Now, do the things that you've done over 5 years reflect the fact that the children are better, competent learners than what they were at the end of the first year? Because you are growing right along with the children. There is no way under the sun that you can internalize all of this in 1 week or 1 year or a semester or anything else. Simply because way back here, and I was telling someone this today, there are 9 different levels of integration. So every single time you hear a presentation, every single time you read a document, you will be taking to it a new immanence, and you will be coming out with new knowledge, a new integration. And that will allow you to transcend where you were. And therefore you will be more knowledgeable and will be more questioning. And that takes us to the end of the model, and we didn't stand up for our break.